Hello, and welcome to the fourth module in our series about dementia and aging with intellectual and developmental disability. Today's topic is presented by Dr. Julie Moran. We will also hear from a caregiver who shares her personal story with Alzheimer's. Dr. Moran is a geriatrician and specialist in aging and intellectual and developmental disabilities. She consults with Tewksbury Hospital as well as the Massachusetts Department of Developmental Services. Dr. Moran is also a clinical instructor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. Today's topic is applying the knowledge to dementia caregiving and caregiver support.
So when we think about ways to apply some of our knowledge about dementia to the practical aspects of caregiving, you want to make sure you're keeping in mind that forgetfulness and memory impairment are a hallmark of dementia. So an early deficit is the inability to learn new information. This is something that becomes a stumbling block for a lot of people when they think about behavioral approaches or communication approaches to somebody with dementia. So behavioral approaches that require an understanding of cause and effect or consequences are generally not useful because they require learning. And strategies that require a carryover of information over an extended period of time may no longer be useful or effective. So rewards and consequences or delayed gratification, and this would be something like a sticker chart or something where there's an earned reward that occurs on Fridays. For somebody who has a short-term memory deficit, that type of a behavioral strategy is no longer going to be helpful and might just lead to more frustration and failure because the individual does not have a concept of understanding that their current behavior is going to have an impact on something that they may or may not receive 4 days from then. That really requires intact memory and learning to be able to follow through with that type of behavior plan. And also attempting to teach a lesson when correcting a behavior also requires learning. So if there's a lot of explanation about why not to do a certain thing or trying to emphasize, rules or any other new rules around a behavior for somebody with an underlying dementia is really not a worthwhile task because they don't have the ability to retain that information later on down the line or even an hour from then. So letting go of the expectation of learning or carrying over new rules is important to having successful communication strategies and successful behavioral interactions, and also with just successful caregiving in general. That when you understand the actual mechanism of a dementia gives you more of an inroads to understanding how you can more successfully communicate with the individual you're caring for. Again, disorientation is common as well. There can be increased confusion in familiar places, and as dementia progresses, adults might become even more dependent on structure, familiarity, predictability, and routine. So a change in an environment can be extremely confusing and emotionally upsetting. Flexibility of an environment is crucial to optimizing the care of a person with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. So making sure that you're doing your best to create some environment that feels structured and safe and predictable, because people who are having a gradual deterioration of their memory abilities have difficulty navigating through any kind of curveball that life might be throwing at them, and they really depend on that kind of structure and routine to make them feel safe and calmed and soothed to be able to anticipate the rest of the day. So when we apply that knowledge to caregiving, we know that communication and language difficulties are common, and decreased ability to express oneself, which is called expressive aphasia, and understand what is being said to us, which is called receptive aphasia, can occur frequently in people with dementia. So you want to, when you're discussing something with somebody with dementia, you want to avoid long verbal explanations because their ability to understand your complex explanation is becoming less and less. And avoid any attempts to verbally reason with an adult with dementia, as this can be extremely unproductive. And that's because the individual has a worsening, if not non-existent ability to verbally reason about anything. It requires functions of insight and judgment and an understanding of what had just taken place to be able to even do this. So this might be a totally unproductive and frustrating exercise for somebody. And because disorientation and confusion contributes to resistance to change and transition. We might have some difficulty adapting to the day-to-day flow of a daily routine because not everything follows the same exact structure and routine every day. So adults with dementia do often crave routine and structure, and this can become even more pronounced as dementia progresses. So you want to make sure you're anticipating transition times and aim to provide the most calm, predictable, and reliable routine possible, and adapt routines to fit individuals' needs. You want to make sure you're staying light on your feet with making plans and adjusting to what the individual is giving you feedback for, and thinking about when the individual is at their most calm or how you might be able to enhance that feeling of calm or safety or security in that individual. So that might mean calling in different types of favorite music or other favorite security objects or anything else that might be favorite items to look at to help make it through a more difficult time of transition.
It would be nice to have other families that you're in touch with, going through a similar process. Mm-hmm. I think it would be good to talk to other people, to hear how other people are coping, to get some ideas about what might be possible.
Caregiver support. Not to be too simplistic, but rule number 1 of caregiver support is that to provide good care, you must practice good self-care. And rule number 2 is, when in doubt, refer to rule number 1. This is an important thing to keep in mind, that good self-care is crucial to good care and good caregiving. And this is something that often is made the lowest priority for caregivers who are just trying to perform all of their caregiving tasks and really letting go of their own needs as caregivers. But particularly in the case of caregiving for dementia, it is really a marathon and not a sprint. And the caregiver is such an integral part of the success and overall health and well-being of the individual with dementia, that caring for oneself as a caregiver is how you care for an adult with dementia. Because if the caregiver is suddenly unwell or has neglected their own physical health and falls ill or gets injured, then the entire system often falls apart, or at least is compromised. So making sure that you're caring for yourself is very important. It's also very important to make sure there's a team that's involved as much as possible, to recruit other people into your network, to allow some support so you can get some respite, you can offload some of the work or stress to somebody else so you can take a break. And so the important thing is also to know your limitations and ask for help. And try to ask for help not when you're drowning, but as you're feeling like you're starting to feel that stress or that pinch in your ability to do your job from day to day. Create a support network around you to the best of your ability. Identify the people who are going to be supportive to you, and look for other ways that you can recruit some more formal support or caregiving support from any of the agencies involved in your life. So use resources that are available through the Alzheimer's Association, which the Massachusetts, New Hampshire chapter is really excellent. And keep in mind that the Alzheimer's Association is not specific just to individuals with Alzheimer's disease, but they really have identified themselves as a support network and a support agency for dementia of all forms. The Department of Developmental Services obviously has a wealth of resources available, and in terms of being able to provide guidance and support and think about options, important to involve the folks from DDS as early as possible in discussing and planning on how to use resources to help support the individual ideally. And use local senior service providers or community support agencies to help, again, develop more supports around the individual and find appropriate programming and services that are going to meet their needs. And in the end stages of dementia, or even prior to the end stages of dementia, a discussion of hospice, which is available at the end stage of dementia, is an important thing to consider. End-of-life decision-making is going to be discussed elsewhere in a different topic on a different webinar. but it is very important throughout the whole lifespan of dementia to be keeping goals of care and end-of-life planning in mind. And the overall goal is to be as proactive as possible and not reactive. It's important for individuals to plan ahead, and so they do not have to be surprised or face a decision in the setting of a crisis, because many of the stages or changes related to dementia are things that we can at least hypothetically anticipate and plan for, so that when we encounter them, if and when we encounter them, we feel at least somewhat prepared for that. But the bottom line is really taking care of yourself and providing good care.
So it's very important that families stay in touch, stay alert, be supportive of staff, help them. It's extremely important. I think the more active families are with an individual, the more in touch they're going to be, no matter what. And each time you visit at her apartment or at a group home, you have to say something in a very supportive way, or also, to give them a little lift, or say, why don't you do something or other.
Thank you, Dr. Moran, and thank you for listening. This training module is one in a series of webinars about general aging with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Additional webinars appear on your screen. For additional resources on aging with intellectual and developmental disabilities and to access the webinars that were previously recorded, please visit either the Massachusetts Department of Developmental Services or the Center for Developmental Disabilities Evaluation and Research websites on aging with IDD. Thank you for listening.